Talking to some of the best names in contemporary Christian music. This is the Hope FM Artist Interview.
And welcome to this episode of the Artist Interview, a podcast from Hope FM. I'm your host, Gordon T, and it's my absolute honour to speak to stars from around the world of contemporary Christian music. And this week, I'm very, very pleased to welcome to the first time to the show, none other than Chris Cleveland from Stars Go Dim. Before we meet him, let's hear a track that many of you will recognise. It's Heaven on Earth.
Take my life and let it be set on fire for all to see. Break me down, build me up again. Don't leave me the way I've been. Take my heart into your hands. Come and finish what you began. Till I seek your kingdom first. Till I shine like heaven on earth.
And that was Heaven on Earth by Stars Go Dim. Hey Chris, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute honour. Now, we play your music fairly regularly here in the UK on Hope FM, but we don't really know you very much as a person. We don't know much about the history of the band. Do you want to share a little bit about your faith journey to start with? Tell us, have you always been a Christian, or has it been one of those things where life has thrown a few curveballs? We'd love to know.
Yes, absolutely. And I have to say, if you guys are playing this much music, then I'm just coming to London. You know what I mean? I got to get over there and see you guys. My wife was there last month because her best friend got married in London. So she had never been over. And it's been, like 12 or 13 years since I've been overseas now. So I need to get back over there.
You should. Well, just out of interest, whereabouts in London was the wedding, do you know?
Some fancy hotel. I don't know.
Well, that sounds nice. I hope she had a great time.
I think she really did. I was bummed. I had shows. The whole world has been shut down, but we've been able to play music over the summer here. And so I was busy trying to make up for the last year and a half of no shows, so I couldn't make it over. So I was really bummed out about it. But it was all good. But yeah, I love the question that you gave there, because I think the Christian life and kind of this journey does have like ups and downs and seasons and these times where we think we've got it all figured out, and then we realize we don't know anything, and then we start over and, and keep going. And I've had plenty of those. So I grew up in a Christian family. Really, my parents are awesome, and they were singers and musicians, and on both sides of my family, I had grandparents and aunts and uncles and things like that sang or played. And so I had a great grandma that, led worship in her church until the week she passed away. And
wow, what a heritage. That's so cool.
I know. And my dad's mom got me piano lessons at a young age. And so I started playing piano for the church when I was 10 years old. And then my brother and I started traveling around doing like little worship things at revivals and things. I don't know if you guys have those over there, but here, you go to like little country churches or whatever, and somebody preach and have music and that kind of thing. So at a young age, we were traveling around doing those kind of things. And it's almost like I just never stopped.
It was in your blood right from the start by the sounds of things.
Yeah. And so we were kind of this family that turned the lights on at the church and turned them off. We were the first ones in and last ones out. And my parents did kind of bivocational ministry. So they had jobs, but also, were youth ministers or pastored churches and that kind of stuff when we were young. And so it was just, kind of drilled into me from an early age that's what we did. And I had, a really honest faith experience. I did all the things that kind of the typical evangelistic church in America does. I said the prayer and did the things that would make you a Christian, at like 5, and got baptized when I was 5 years old. And, but what 5-year-old knows what they're doing? So, I had different stages of that where I kind of figured out what faith was for me, in different parts of life. And so, but I always really had this connection to God. And early on, we kind of had some interesting like family things and dynamics that were weird, and some struggles when I was kind of a teenager. And I was always able to separate God from from the people that love them, you know? And I think a lot of times people will get those two things mixed up. And so when life hits them hard, or if there's a disappointment, or let's say some sort of trauma, you know, in their life associated with people who believe, then they throw God out with it. And I was lucky enough to be able to separate those two for me in my story, where I trusted God for who he was, you know, at a really early age. And so that stuck with me for a really long time. And even in moments when I was like, oh, I'm not sure about the church thing, or I'm not sure about, you know, some of these other things, I was always really sure about my relationship with God. As I got older, I think that just continued to evolve and learn. You know, I think when I read in scriptures about like working out your salvation, I feel like now I'm 36, and I feel like that's all I do. And you know, over the course of honestly the last 6 years or so for me, faith wise, it's been a really big journey of unlearning and relearning and taking God out of the small box that I had fashioned him into, which is like very American and very Western. And
I think we do this. One of the things that I've been learning as I've got older is that there's always more. And you're right. You're totally right. It's so easy to say God fits in this little nice packet, and you build your construct of who God is and try and limit him into those things. So that's really interesting. The relearning who God is as he reveals more of himself. As long as we're open to it, we can always learn more, can't we?
I think so. And I think what happens when we put him in that box is really we're creating God in our image, rather than the reverse, which is him creating us in his. And that's easy, right? When we're young, we tend to need something that's like concrete and definite, and do this, don't do that. This is right, this is wrong. And those black and white things make sense, and they're easy to digest. And, you know, a lot of people don't want to dive in deeper, and I understand that. As I've gotten older, I've become more curious about why I do and think and feel and all of the things, and why you do and why we all do, and how it all kind of connects together. And you know, long story short, on the faith side of it, is it's led me to a much bigger God. It's led me to a place where I'm much more open about what I believe and think. And it's made me more interested and curious about the way of the kingdom, and how to actually live my life. It's made life more tangible. It's made these moments mean more. And so now I feel like, with kids of my own, trying to teach them the same, you know, this faith walk and all of this, that those are the kind of things that I'm looking at. Like, who is Jesus, and what did he really teach, and how can I be more like him, and what is the design of all of this, and how can we, you know, like have a fulfilled life here, and make it mean something. It's a whole like exciting journey for me, and I've had a lot of ups and downs in it, and I feel like finally at 36 I'm beginning to understand what I don't know, which helps me understand what I do love and know, and so that's really exciting. In the midst of all that, I've played music for now and traveled for 26 years on the road, and gone all over the world and played and done different bands and different versions of it. So Stars Go Dim actually started as a mainstream pop band in 2007. And so had always led worship in churches and grew up doing that, and was actually a worship leader at one of the largest congregations in the Methodist Church here in the United States.
Now, just to help us, see, if you say Methodist Church in the UK,
yeah,
you know, it might be, well, I don't know, you know, 100 people, something like that, maybe.
Oh yeah.
What would the largest Methodist congregation in the States be?
Ooh, the largest.
Well, the one you were at.
We were 10,000 people.
10,000.
10,000.
Yeah, that's quite a lot of people. I'm thinking in the back of my head, there aren't going to be very many churches in the whole of the UK that are as large as that. So,
Yeah.
So that's a huge number to lead worship for.
Yeah.
What was it like?
It was good and crazy and you know, stressful and awesome and bad and all of it. You know, it was life. You know, for me, I really, really loved the people at that church. I really, really loved the mentorship that I got there. I learned so much. I grew up in a different background. Like in America, there's something like 3,500 different denominations, which tells you how much Americans want to feel like they're right. Um, so, I don't agree with that. I'm going to go start my own, denomination.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, which is a whole other subject. But so I grew up in a different kind of faith tradition, and I loved, some of the things that church taught me, and some of the, I'll call them like the elders of the church, like mentored into me, and it was a really great experience for me and a great place to grow in my faith. One of the things I really like about the Methodist Church, specifically the one that I was at, was I was so used to these faith experiences that were really emotional. And we get that a lot in like our charismatic churches here, or even some of our more like reformed churches. They still run off of emotion. The Methodist Church, there's no emotion to it. It's very informed. It's like you go through the classes and you learn and you take in information and you make these informed decisions. It's typically like the people, specifically even in the church we were at, but I think probably Methodist as a whole, you can fact check me on this, typically more educated, like college educated or university educated people. So they just come at faith from a little bit different angle, which I really enjoyed. So you weren't making these like rash emotional decisions, but when you believed something, you had some like substance to stand on, and I really enjoyed that. And probably like what you guys have a little bit even more of, there is that there's like a faith tradition, this communion of saints that when we do some of these things, it's, and I had to learn this because I didn't grow up in it, but there's this great like connection when we say the Lord's Prayer or when we say the Apostles' Creed and some of these things, like, oh, like somebody 1,000 years ago said this,
Yeah.
or you know what I mean? There's a cool connection to some of that. And so, yeah, I led worship for that church for 10 years, and I did it kind of alongside Stars Go Dim. And so the first few years I was traveling around the world doing mainstream music with Stars Go Dim, but we would play, I mean, with some of the biggest artists in the world and had #1 pop songs in other countries and that kind of thing. And
Which countries? Which ones did you excel in?
like the Philippines and like some of the more places like that. We were really big in the Philippines, actually. Maybe had 3 or 4, I can't remember now, #1 there.
Wow.
And Australia, places like that. So kind of cool things that are like, honestly, didn't really affect our lives very much because they were so far removed. But it was like, hey, that's kind of cool to say.
It is cool. Hats off to that. I've never had a #1 in the Philippines. I would like to know which artists are you talking about?
Oh, goodness.
You were being modest, not saying, but I'd like to know.
You kind of name them. We played with all kinds of people. Elton John, Billy Joel, John Mayer, Justin Bieber, trying to think. We were kind of all over the map.
Do you know what? Those are big names. They really genuinely are big names, my friend. So, but none of those names are bigger than the name of Jesus.
Come on, baby. The people at that time, they used to say, well, what is it like to play in both these places? And I said, man, I'm just playing love songs in both places. Some of them are just directed in different ways. And in 2011 or 12, we kind of had a shift there in the band, and we just kind of stopped playing, and there were some issues that had come up. It's a long story, but which kind of put the mainstream thing on pause, and honestly kind of stopped it in its tracks altogether. And I kind of wondered if I was going to continue to do music or what I was going to do. I'd met my wife, and we started having a family, and I was off the road for a couple of years and just leading worship at the church, and then decided, I've always been in this Christian space. I love this music. I've led worship my whole life. I've been in it. I wonder what's going on in the Christian music world. And so I came out to Nashville, Tennessee. I lived in a place called Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is right in the middle of the states. Like if you threw a dart and you hit the middle of the US, like that's about Oklahoma, and we're right in there. So there's like a musical called Oklahoma. You guys.
There is. I think lots of our listeners will have seen that at some point.
So your one reference point to Oklahoma might be that.
I'm afraid that is the only one.
Cowboys and Indians. If you've ever heard of the Trail of Tears, which is kind of when the U.S. government took all the Native Americans and kind of forced them out of their land, it was called the Trail of Tears that they walked, and they gave them these Indian territories, they called them. The town I grew up in was called Owasso, which is Cherokee for end of the trail. So there's a lot of like Native American history and that kind of stuff from where I'm from. Most of us have some sort of ancestry that dates back to that kind of thing, and so it's really kind of interesting. So Cowboys and Indians, Oklahoma, that's where I'm from. So yeah, so I was like, hey, what is going on in Christian music? Let me go check this out. And so we went and took a trip, and I eventually signed a record deal with a label here in Nashville.
Which label was that?
At that point, it was a label called Word, which was also Warner Brothers, which is kind of a larger label. And then eventually we got sold to a guy named Mike Curb, who's he does like country music and pop music and all that kind of stuff. And so now I'm technically on Curb Records. So I've been acquired a few times over the years. So the first song I ever put out kind of went crazy, and it made life wild. And so I was working full time at the church. I was touring 8 months a year. My average week would look like, leaving on a Wednesday to go out on tour on a plane or a bus or in a car. And I would play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights. Then on Monday, I would get back in a car, on a plane, or in a bus, and I would go back to Oklahoma. And I would then get up on Tuesday mornings, go to church, put my bands through rehearsal, and maybe see my family for 45 minutes a week. And I did that week after week for 3 years.
That sounds relentless. I just want to check this.
Yeah.
So how long have you been married right now?
We are about to celebrate our 10-year anniversary.
10 years. Okay. That's great news. And how old are your kids at this moment?
8, 7, and 5.
Okay. So when you were going out on the road, how did you have kids at that moment?
Yeah. So my wife was very much kind of a single mom at home. And so my 2 oldest were babies. They were, 2, 3 years old, and she was pregnant when that started. So we had our third kind of in the midst of that, 5 or 6 years ago. And so it was craziness, and I knew that I couldn't keep it up. It was relentless. Like you said, it was something that I was like, I felt God kind of like saying, yeah, this isn't a great idea, bub, but I'm pretty stubborn. And to be honest, I like the money, and the church was paying me really well. I was finally making good money on the road, and I felt like I was doing this ministry thing. But to be honest, I was, losing everything kind of at the altar of all of that, whether it's ministry or my own greed or selfishness. And so I joke about this kind of at our shows. I'm like, I don't know if the Lord ever speaks directly through any of you guys through your spouse like he does me. But in reality, my wife came to me and just said, hey, and I knew it, but this isn't working anymore. And so there was this moment where I was like, okay, like I can either lose everything that I have and love and say that I'm working for, or I can get it together and fight for my family and figure this ministry stuff out. So we knew we needed to be together, and that was tough to do in Oklahoma. So I stepped out of that ministry at the church that I've been in for a decade, and everything that came with it, our community and our friends, and for me, that the paycheck, which was tough. and we sold our home in 4 days. And
Wow, that's a fast sale.
I know. I tell you what, in my like for sale by owner, we didn't even use a realtor. But then we bought a house in Franklin, Tennessee, the house I'm in now, and without seeing it. And this space, this studio was just attic, so it didn't exist at that point. And we moved 10 hours away from our family and our friends and everything. And then I took 6 months off of work completely. And I'd never done that in my life. And I'm an achiever. If you're a fan of the Enneagram or know anything about that, I'm a 3, which means I'm an achiever. I find value in like doing things and succeeding. So for me to not do anything was like a big hit. And so this time was good and it was bad, and it was tough, but like God was like, he was teaching me how to be a dad and a husband again, and really blessing those situations. But a couple months in, I just realized that I'd put every bit of my identity, everything that I thought was good and right and valuable about myself and who I was as a mega church worship leader, or, the CCM artist traveling around the world. And when I wasn't doing that, I just honestly felt worthless, which then made me feel even worse because of how typical that seemed to me. It's like, one, kind of my whole platform is letting people know that they have value and worth and identity and that they're loved. Two, like how many of us have sacrificed our lives on the altar of ministry, and so I really just had to come to grips with who I was. And it was a hard time. It was difficult, but the Lord just met me, I think in a really incredible way, and blessed our family, not in the sense of like money or stuff, but really like began to make us whole. It was a really great time. And honestly, it was kind of like a little, 2020, pre 2020. And so when we hit a year like 2020, when the world stopped and we all became unemployed, and we kind of had to sit around and figure this stuff out, it gave us a new perspective to be able to walk into that and say, God, it's not about what you're taking away, but what have you created space for me to fill with something beautiful. And so that's kind of how we live our day to day now, and God just continues to show up for us and continues to bless us and make us whole. And it's just kind of this beautiful journey that we're on.
That is quite an amazing story of laying everything down and God opening things up. Can you just tell me, what's your wife's name?
Mackenzie.
I just want to now just say, Mackenzie, I'm not wearing a hat, but if I was wearing a hat, hats off to you, because I've got to say, that sounds like an amazing journey to have gone on. And congratulations to both of you for about to celebrate 10 years of marriage. That is excellent news. So the next track we're going to play from you, it's a new track from you. It's called Yes, He Does. Yeah. Can you tell us the backstory to that, please, Chris?
Absolutely. So I've, over the pandemic, we didn't have much to do, right? So we all recorded a lot of songs, and I probably could have put out 4 records worth of music, but this is the first song off of that batch of music. And for me, it's kind of a response to the last year and a half of life. I think when we get into these moments, we can get short-sighted and we can forget who God is. And even for me in 2017, I think it was that story for me too. It's like, God, like, are you who I've believed you to be my whole life? Are you who you say you are? And do you still do the things that you've always done? And, for me and my story, he just shows up every time, and through his faithfulness, he lets us know that yes, he is who he's always been, and yes, he does what he's always done. And that's really what this song is about.
Yes, he does. Still heal the broken, run to the hurting, pour out his love. Yes, he does. Restore the hope of all those who wait for a miracle. Yes, he does.
Chris, thank you so much for all that you've shared from your heart so far, and for that beautiful track as well, just reaffirming that God still does amazing things in us, through us, around us. It'd be wonderful if you'd be happy to pray for the listeners right now.
Absolutely. Thank you. God, I just want to come to you and lift up the people who this podcast, this recording may hit their ears. And I think when we go through tough times, like we've all gone through, and some of us are still going through right now all across the world, sometimes we lose sight of you. And I just pray that you would show up in tangible ways when we have those questions, God, of if you're there and if you see us and if you care. God, just let us know that you do. God, just let us know that you see us, that you know us, that you feel us. God, I just pray that you would show us that your love is not done with us yet, that you're not done pursuing us yet. And God, if we're one of the, gosh, so many in the world, that our world has just been turned upside down in the last year and a half, and we're still trying to figure it out, and we're still trying to find answers. God, I just pray for comfort, and not that. Not expecting you to just come in and sweep in and fix everything now, but God, just that we would know that you're with us. And sometimes that's all we can ask, and sometimes that's enough. And God, we just thank you for your faithfulness, and just pray it over these moments now. It's in your name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Chris. It's great the way that Jesus is always with us, whether things are hard or easy. And if you're in the UK and you're thinking right now, I don't know this Jesus that Chris and Gordon are talking about, just want to encourage you to get along to a church. The churches are open and they want to welcome people to help them find out more of God's amazing love. Do pop along to www.findachurch.co.uk. There's 45,000 churches listed there that would love to welcome you. If you're listening on one of our partner stations around the world, do just contact the studio for that station. They'll be able to help you find and connect into more of God's love. So Chris, thanks for all that you've shared so far. I've got to say, I love your music. I've spent more time listening to you specifically over the last week than ever before, because I wanted just to keep your music on repeat and really get to know a little bit about it. It's a lot of fun. It makes me happy, your music. So if listeners at home are going, well, those tracks are nice, go and have a look. Go on whatever platform you normally get your music from, other than Hope FM, of course, and check out Stars Go Dim, because there is a plethora of great tracks from them. So I'd like to ask really about what your plan is now. What's happening? You talked about all these tracks that you've put together during the pandemic. Have we got a record in sight?
Yes.
Or an album, as we would say in the UK.
A whole album. Yeah, and it feels like an album too. In the past I've released a bunch of what seems like just singles, over the last handful of years. And so this feels like a whole work to be like consumed together, which I'm really excited about. I feel like I've got some of the best music that I've ever made. And if you followed me for long, then that's like a long time. So I'm really, really excited about it. What I try to do is just present like real life and some of my real life and truth that I've come to find, or at least that have been true for me, and put it in a song that can make you feel something. And some of that is really, poppy and fun, and some of it gets, a little more epic and that kind of thing. But I just love what music can do and how universal it is. So we've got a brand new record. The title is Grace in the Wilderness. It's going to release, somewhere in the top of 2022. But Yes He Does is the first release off of that. We've got a whole Christmas project that we're releasing, honestly, way too soon. I don't know why the label is releasing it as early as they are, but I think
I've noticed there are lots of artists. So here we are.
It is.
We're recording this at the very, very end of September 2021, but I've noticed a number of artists are already out there with their Christmas tracks. I'm going, oh man.
And I think it has to do with DSPs and streaming sites needing time to get those on the right playlist and that kind of thing. But I'm pretty sure my first Christmas song releases like mid-October. So if you pre-Halloween, do you guys do Halloween over there?
You know what? I've got to say, we know what Halloween is, and there is probably a division within the church because, generally speaking, the church in the UK would rather do a praise party or a bright lights party or an alternative. I know it's a big cultural thing in the States. So, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
There's a little bit of a divide there. They'll do like they'll do something like churches will do trunk or treats things, but in here, like kids dress up and they walk around, they get candy from people, at their houses, which seems really strange when you say it out loud.
Yeah.
But it's fun. But if you're let's just call it Thanksgiving here. I don't know if you guys have a Thanksgiving either, but we do, which is like the end of last week of November usually. And that's usually for me, like when you throw up the Christmas tree and you're ready for Christmas stuff. But we're like skipping 2 main holidays in the US now. And we're just throwing up Christmas music mid-October. And maybe it's because of the pandemic, people just want to have Christmas for 4 months. I don't know. But you're going to get a Christmas project from us. And then we start dropping the new music at the top of the year. And the new project has 13 songs on it. So you're going to get a whole bunch of music from me really quickly, and still writing and still doing all that kind of stuff. And so I'm really excited. Write a lot of songs for other people and artists that have been coming out and will be coming out. And so I continue to do that kind of stuff as well. So it's really fun for me.
That does sound quite fun. I'm certainly looking forward to the album. That sounds brilliant. Which other artists do you write for then?
Oh, I've had a few songs come out recently in the worship space. So had a song that was recorded by Bethel Music, which is a big worship group here. I had some songs recorded by Maverick City, which is kind of a new worship collective.
Yeah.
Here I'm actually in 2 hours going to write with them again here in town. So I just had a song come out with a guy named Mike Donaghy, who is the lead singer for 10th Avenue North. He just released an awesome project and maybe one of my favorite songs I've ever been a part of.
So he's just doing solo stuff now, isn't he? Is that right?
Yeah. It's great. It's so good. I've had some songs from even Southern gospel people, like Jason Crabb, his last song, Just As I Am, I wrote. Songs from Avalon, the gospel singing group, and so kind of all over the board.
Wow, that is something, you see, that I don't think I realised, because when an artist is performing a song, you listen to the song and it's very easy just to assume it's their song. But I do know that a lot of people are busy writing songs for everybody. But that's a great list of people to be doing stuff. Bethel Music produced some amazing tracks. So, and Maverick City, I've got to say, wow, they're making waves. So that's
they're probably the biggest artist at this point in our genre, like that, so quickly.
It's fantastic. Okay, so let me ask about your kids though, because you talked about you at 5 deciding to become a Christian, praying that prayer. But you said, but what do kids know?
Yeah.
So this is my question. So one of your children is 5. Jesus very much says, let the little children come to me, and we should have faith like children. So childlike faith. So where are your kids at on all this stuff?
I think my wife and I were just talking about this the other day because it's so interesting. She came to faith. She didn't grow up in a Christian home, and she came to faith really more naturally on her own over time. And so she didn't get a lot of the stuff that I got. And so she was like, I don't know how to teach my kids this stuff. And I came from this place where it's like, well, I don't know that I want to teach my kids the same thing I got taught. And so what I find myself doing is like, Dad, tell me about, Noah's Ark. And I'm like, well, and I go into like this really deep theologically, based thing. It's like, well, history tells us that there was a flood. Like we can find, I'm going into like all this stuff, and they're just like, well, Dad, tell me the point of the story, and I'm trying to, give them something that would make me feel like I'm not lying to them, And so for us, I think one of my nieces, they call it when here, I don't know if they have the same verbiage, because a lot of this is like 1950s Billy Graham type language, like people getting saved and like the sinner's prayer and that kind of thing. So I don't know if that's a cultural thing just here in the US or if that's a thing
But
too.
Billy has done many missions in the UK over the years, or at least I think two very big ones that I was aware of. So
We have, there's this thing, like I grew up, like you say this prayer.
the sinner's prayer.
Yeah, right. Which is basically be something like, God, I've sinned, but I believe in you and forgive me my sins and that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden you're magically a Christian. That's kind of what I was, in a real nutshell, what I was given. And something that I kind of push back on a little bit now, for different reasons. It is probably a bigger podcast than this. And my niece called me and she was so excited because she had asked Jesus into her heart, and that's how she said it to me. And I found myself, and I kind of said a joke, and I said, well, did he fit, and just kind of joking with her. My wife came and she had the perfect response, and I thought, oh my God, this is exactly how I want to raise my kids, and exactly why I married you, because you see this so much better than I do. And she looked at my niece and she said, I've seen Jesus in you since the second you were born.
Oh,
I am so glad that you see him in you now too.
that is a lovely thing to say, isn't it?
That's it. That's what I want my kids to know.
Do you know that track by Stephen Curtis Chapman, Fingerprints of God?
I don't remember it. I'll have to look at it.
Oh, you're going to have to look it up after this. It's a great track. So, and it talks about that sort of thing, about the fact that you can see God's fingerprints all over people's lives. And but what a beautiful response by your wife.
Well, I know. And I was just like, man, I'm glad I married you, because, in all of my jadedness and where I feel like I have a tendency to run from some of these things that I was given. She was able to articulate that and how I felt about it, like really, really well. And so for our kids, I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to show them God in them and in others, and try to teach them to be people that bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. And that's really what my life has kind of come to, is like, can we join Christ in every moment, with everyone, in every way, and make what we do here matter? Because I honestly believe that's the Jesus way. I don't think it's about saying some prayer so we go to heaven when we die. I think there's a lot more to it than that. That requires us to see Christ in ourselves first, and so then we can see him everywhere else as well, and invite him into everything else. So for my kids, that's kind of the journey that we're on, and it looks different than it looked when I was a kid. It's much more open-handed, but I'm hoping that it's a good angle. We'll find out, I guess.
Yeah, we will. You can come back on the show in 10 years' time and let us know how they're doing as teenagers. That'll be an interesting comparison.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So obviously, touring the world, being on the road all the time, not everything always goes smoothly. And I do like to find out if you've maybe got a story of a time when things didn't go as you hoped.
Oh, they never go as we hope, ever. I don't know that in 26 years of traveling, there's been one instance where it's gone like I thought it was going to go. So, I mean, even right now, we're kind of in the midst of this where we've been out of work for, a year and a half. I didn't take a paycheck for a year and a half. God provided in crazy ways, which is, unreal. And we worked like crazy for like June, July, August, and now I'm doing a fall tour, and it's just a lot of work. Half of them have canceled. It's last weekend I was trying to put this tour together. My bus driver calls the day before, and his wife had come down with COVID, and then production guys like don't show up, and and at the end of the day, I'm sitting there like, well, you know what? I could either get upset about this and let this ruin my day, or cancel these like couple of shows, which honestly I'd really like to do in my mind, because it's going to be so much work. Or I can be grateful, and I can step into this and change my perspective, and thank God for the ability that you know what, I travel around and sing songs for a living. And so we went out and it was hard and I didn't feel good and all of the things, but it was so, I was just so thankful to still be able to do it. And I think life on the road for most of us is like that. I was talking to a friend of mine who's on the road a lot, Ryan Stevenson. He started doing his tour last weekend, and he was like, he was telling me the same stories, and it's just, and sometimes we get in our heads about this. Oh God, I'm the only one. Like, why is this happening to me? So and so, we're comparing. Oh, so and so doesn't have to do this. They've got a better road. They got an easier road. And sometimes it's nice to, like for me and him, maybe we're just commiserating together, but we're like, oh, we're not alone in this. And I think like in life for us together, when we get in those moments, we put our blinders on and we're like, oh, it's only me. I'm alone in this. I'm the only one dealing with this. And if we can, you know, take a step back, widen our perspective, we can see that there's a lot of people feeling the same way we do. And there's a place for us to connect in that. And if you want me to get theological on it, I really feel like the gospel message is one of community. And it happens, I believe, like the kingdom, you know, really comes alive when we're in community with each other. And so when we can do that and we can connect in those ways, I think we become our most healthy selves. So even in the midst of craziness, even in the midst of breakdowns and sickness and things that go wrong, that community helps us keep our perspective and see the good.
Talking to some of the best names in contemporary Christian music. This is the Hope FM Artist Interview.
What's the best way for people to connect with you if they want to find out more about you and follow you, etc.? Where are you hanging out online?
Yeah, the best place you can find me is on Instagram or Facebook. I'm on both of those daily at Just Stars Go Dim. So if you want to shoot me a message, or if you heard the song or something like that, and or just want to keep up with whatever's going on, Just Stars Go Dim at both of them. You'll be able to find me, and I'll be the one responding to messages and all that kind of stuff if you want to chat or say hey or whatever.
Sweet, that sounds great. And is there a website address as well? Is that
starsgodim.com?
.com? Easy peasy. I suppose I don't like this question very much, but I'm going to ask it because I'm slightly intrigued. The name Stars Go Dim, is that a name you came up with, and why?
Yeah, a lot of people, that's like the question everybody asks me.
I know, that's why I didn't want to ask it, but I'm actually slightly intrigued.
I could lie to you and give you a really great answer, or I could just tell you the truth, which I will, which is like when we started as a mainstream band, like the dude just made it up and it has no meaning. But when I started doing Christian music, like everybody would ask me all the time, what does this mean? And I'm like, man, I got to come up with this Jesus answer for this, you know? So I'm scouring the Bible, like trying to find some like retroactive truth here for this name. And there was, and I can't remember it now, so you can fact check me. There's something in Matthew that talked about like God's promises outlasting the stars, like they'll last longer than even the stars will go dim or something, and his promises will kind of endure type of thing. And I can't remember, that's my paraphrase.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but I was like, ooh, that could work.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Let's go with that.
I was convinced. If we edit it, so we only say the second bit, nobody know that it's actually totally meaningless.
Yeah, that's
but it's still quite cool that even though it was meaningless at the time, there is actually a meaning that you could, if you want to, make.
You know what? Maybe we can go full circle, because there's plenty of things in life that we feel like are meaningless or didn't mean anything in the moment, that when we look back on them might have like eternal impact. So there's plenty of those things that we can find in life.
I am surprised sometimes in my journey where I go, I've got no idea at all why this is all happening, and then afterwards you go, man, it wasn't necessarily comfortable, but actually I can see actually the benefits and some of the good that God's brought through it all. Yeah. So we got one more track,
yes,
to play from you, and it's an older track. It's called "You Are Loved."
Yeah.
Tell us about "You Are Loved."
This is a song that honestly has kind of defined my life, and it's the platform that I travel around. It's the only reason why I do this anymore, to be honest. And that's to go around the world and let people know that their life has value, that it has worth, that it's worth living, that no matter who they are, no matter where they are, no matter what they've done or what they're in, that God sees them, he knows them, and just as they are, he loves them. And so that's what I'm all about. That's what I sing about, and that's what I continue to spread everywhere I go.
You are love. If your heart's in 1,000 pieces, if you're lost and you're far from easy, just look up, know you are love. Just look up, know you are love. When it feels like something's missing, if it hurts but you can't find healing, just look up, know you are love. Just look up, know you are love. If your heart's in 1,000 pieces, if you're lost and you're far from easy, just look up, know you are love. Just look up, know you are love.
And that was You Are Loved by Stars Go Dim. And I'm so grateful to Chris Cleveland for spending time with us today here on the Artist Interview, a podcast from Hope FM. And I hope you, dear listener, have really enjoyed that and been blessed by it. And there are many other amazing interviews from fantastic artists available on your favourite podcast platform. Just search up The Artist Interview. Please like it, share it with your friends, and be blessed.
Get more interviews now. Visit hopefm.com/The Artist Interview.